Joining me now is Byron Reese. He's the CEO of Gigaom. He's also written 2 books, fascinating. Infinite Progress, How Technology and the Internet Will End Ignorance, Disease, and Hunger and Poverty and War. That's ambitious. I'm gonna ask about that in a second. And now the 4th age, Smart Robots, Conscious Computers, and the Future of Humanity. Byron, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Good to have you here. So before we get to the newer book, let me go back to the first book. Did the internet end ignorance, disease, hunger, poverty, and war?
Well, not yet, but I think it will. I think the idea of technology in general being something that multiplies human ability, I think the internet's brought out a lot of good in people. You know, it's so easy to list out all the bad things it's done, but it makes us more informed. It connects us to other people. I think it's so new still, but I do believe it's going to do all of those things.
Okay, great. And Byron, I'm very split on it as I am about the humanity. So overall, I vote yes on both. But so in the media, there's a lot of discussion about its downsides. So I don't think we have to rehash those because people are so familiar with them. But even at this date, what do you think are the big upsides of the internet that you're hopeful and optimistic about?
You know, I think what it did is it revealed a lot of things about people we didn't know. I think about my dad's generation, like he probably never wrote a word after he left college. And if I said, why don't you write? He would say, I don't really have anything to say. But what happened is, you know, we started blogs and 100 million people started them. We said, hey, review products on a website. 1 billion people did that. We said, hey, now you can upload video, and 1 billion videos get uploaded, and photographs. I think it revealed is that if you put tools in people's hands. Oh, and the biggest one is it showed that you could have a problem and you could post it online, and perfect strangers would take time to answer you. You know, nobody foresaw we were going to make the best encyclopedia ever by volunteers. I mean, it really has revealed, I think, the very best in people, and has only begun to do so.
Yeah, you know, I agree with you so much because, look, first of all, we're having this conversation over the internet. It connected us. And in the past, you would have needed a $1 billion media organization to do this simple conversation. In the past, I know because I was part of the past, I'm old enough to know that when you wanted to look things up, you actually had to get in your car, drive to the library, use the Dewey Decimal System, get a book, or if you wanted to see an old article, instead of Googling it in half a second, you had to go get microfiche and look it up on microfiche if it existed. So the internet is obviously a tool. It's a very, very powerful tool. Saying that, well, some people have done bad things with it is kind of like saying we shouldn't have had books because Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. Well, that's true, but other people also wrote wonderful things.
Right. No, I completely agree. You know, not only just how hard it was to find facts, but how hard it was to find other people that shared your interest. You know, when I was growing up like you, I had my choice of any of 3 news channels I could watch at 5 o'clock. And that was about it. And there were, half a dozen national publications, and there were not dissenting views. There were not alternative viewpoints. There was none of that. It was like you could paint your house any color any shade of white you wanted, but that was it. And that was the world we left behind. And so in all of its messiness, I have to think this is much better.
Yeah, I know it's not a popular opinion these days, but I think it's actually fairly indisputable. What, are we gonna go back to the dark ages with less information? Because some people have used that information and used those tools in a negative way. So it's not to say we shouldn't do anything about that, but we should be thoughtful about how we constrain that without limiting our freedoms.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so now let's talk about the future. And that's the context of your latest book, The 4th Age. So you talk about smart robots, conscious computers, and the future of humanity. So talk to me about that future. What does the future of humanity look like?
You know, I got really interested in artificial intelligence because you have probably noticed lots of people have very differing views about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And that's really what that book is about. Why do people have such different views? And I learned it isn't that they believe that they know different things. Elon Musk doesn't know something about AI that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't, but that people believe different things. And so I wanted to explore what artificial intelligence could do. And specifically, it all hinges on whether you believe people are machines. And the idea that we're going to create like a super intelligence or a general intelligence is not based on people knowing how to do it. Everybody agrees we don't know how to do it, but it's based on the simple idea that people are machines. If you don't believe that, and while the majority of people in Silicon Valley do, the majority of everybody else doesn't. If you don't believe that, then we'll never build machines that can do everything people can do, and people will therefore never be obsoleted. Okay. I deeply believe also this idea that these technologies, artificial intelligence and robotics, which do one thing, they increase human productivity, that somehow that's bad for anybody to have their productivity increased. And so I think the idea that it's going to destroy jobs is not just unlikely, but actually impossible. You can't go and make everybody more productive and then, now there's nothing to do with that productivity.
Byron, watch out, the Yang Gang is coming for you.
So I would just say this, if you went back 25 years to the beginning of the internet and you said to somebody, hey, there's gonna be billions of people using this, what's it gonna do to jobs? They would have said, it's gonna be hard on the stockbrokers, hard on the travel agents, hard on the newspapers, hard on the malls, and they would have been right about everything. But what you can never see is what it's gonna create. Nobody would have ever said, there'll be Etsy and eBay and Amazon and Uber and Google and Airbnb and all of the million companies. And so that's what gives us that distorted view, because you can always tell what it's gonna destroy, but we don't have the imagination to understand what it's gonna create.
Yeah, Paul Krugman famously said back in 1998, I believe, that the internet would not be a big deal. It'd be the equivalent of a fax machine.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Oops. I hear he's really smart. Anyway, but this idea that humans are machines, I think most people outside of Silicon Valley really have not heard much about that or discussed it much. So what do you mean by that?
Well, there's two things people mean by AI. One is a very simple thing, which is kind of machine learning, where we study a bunch of data and we make projections, and that's like a spam filter, and we know how to do that. But there's this other kind of AI, general intelligence, which is building an AI as smart and versatile as a human. And nobody knows how to do it. Like I said, there's complete agreement on that. But it's based on the idea that, well, if everything in you is just physical and mechanical and electrical, there's nothing magic, quote unquote, then we could build a computer to do that someday. And then that computer would be you. And then 2 years later, it would be twice as smart as you. And 2 years later, twice again. So it's predicated on the idea that human intelligence is purely mechanistic. But there are other views that don't support that. And they're not all, like you could have a soul, or you could have some kind of a higher emergence or something. You could have something that isn't just cause and effect going on in your brain. That means you can't actually ever build human intelligence.
So Byron, I'm not actually worried about the intelligence part. I think we probably can build that. I think we could build the mechanics behind it. I'm not worried about a soul that's too ephemeral or ethereal, and it's and not an interesting conversation. But I am interested in consciousness. So what's your take, or the two camps here on whether consciousness can be built?
So people say we don't know what consciousness is, and that actually isn't true. We know exactly what it is. It's the experience of being you. A computer can measure temperature and you can feel warmth. And whatever that difference is, you experiencing warmth, we call that consciousness. The problem is, it's called the last great scientific question. We don't know how to ask scientifically, nor do we know what the answer would look like. And so if it is a physical phenomenon, we don't even really understand how matter can have an experience, how inanimate matter can experience warmth or love or creativity. And so you have to say, well, where does it come from if we have it? And I cover 7 theories. There's a lot of theories, and some of them suggest computers could be conscious, and some suggest they can't be.
All right, so finally then, Byron, what's your take? Having studied all of it, written a book about it, do you think that we will be able to create machines that are in essence us, including consciousness?
I am unconvinced, but that isn't said, I just believe it. I know this. All these years in, we don't know how the brain works. We don't know how memories are stored. And we don't know how the mind works. The mind is all these things your brain does. Like, you have a sense of humor, but your heart doesn't have a sense of humor. Like, where does that come from? And then we have consciousness, which is something we can't even really grapple with scientifically. And so I can't look at all that and say, yeah, we don't understand any of that, but we're gonna build it. I don't have that much faith.
Okay, well, it's definitely interesting. The book is called Fourth Age, Smart Robots, Conscious Computers and the Future of Humanity. Byron Reese, CEO of Gigaom, thank you for joining us, we appreciate it.
Thanks a bunch.